a 13-year-old African-American student, frequently daydreaming in class, gets unexpectedly singled out by his instructor. He must rise and tackle a mathematical problem well above his current academic level. His peers, some chuckling, others skeptical, observe him with doubt. However, they're unaware that the student standing before the chalkboard possesses extraordinary mathematical abilities. The afternoon sunlight streamed golden rays through the vinyl flooring of Riverside Middle School. It was mid-September in Atlanta, Georgia, and the academic halls buzzed with the gentle hum of students conversing while desk chairs scraped across surfaces. Classroom 302 was typical in this regard. The energy of teenage life permeated the atmosphere as pupils entered for their 8th grade mathematics lesson. In the rear corner, beside the glass pane, Jamal Carter, an African-American youth, took his customary position. The 13-year-old possessed a subdued demeanor that enabled him to blend seamlessly into his surroundings. His dark eyes, intelligent yet frequently unfocused, drifted toward the outdoor scenery as he positioned his workbook upon the surface. His stance appeared casual, perhaps overly so, with one limb resting atop the desk while the other supported his jaw. The view beyond the glass revealed several trees dancing softly in the wind. A small bird jumping along the barrier seemed to hold his focus much more than the active classroom surrounding him. Jamal's distraction wasn't intentional. He possessed an acute intellect, one that frequently operated more rapidly than his classroom instruction. Mathematical concepts and formulas captivated him, yet the monotonous exercises and sluggish advancement of his current course felt uninspiring. Rather than participating actively or contributing, he allowed his thoughts to wander, discovering comfort in the consistent patterns of nature outside. His workbook, while largely empty on the designated sections, contained margins packed with complex formulas and answers he'd written during personal time, challenges he'd given himself to work through. At the classroom's front, Mrs. Amanda Thompson positioned herself with crossed arms, examining the class as they settled into their places. A strict educator with extensive background, Mrs. Thompson had earned recognition for her direct communication style and demanding standards. Her professional jacket and carefully arranged hair only enhanced her commanding presence. She took satisfaction in her ability to recognize talent in her pupils and didn't hesitate to challenge them when she believed they weren't reaching their potential. This particular day, though, her tolerance was diminishing. The outcomes from the latest mathematics examination rested in an organized pile on her workspace, and while several students had succeeded, most had fallen short. Mrs. Thompson couldn't accept poor performance, and seeing numerous disappointing grades made her wonder if her students were investing the dedication she required. She gathered the stack of papers and started announcing names, returning the examinations with short remarks. "Good effort," she'd tell some, while saying, "You must review more," to others. Upon reaching Jamal's workspace, she paused momentarily. His examination lay on top, displaying a bold red 100% encircled at the peak. This wasn't Jamal's first perfect score, yet his seeming disinterest during lessons irritated her. Delivering him the paper, she offered no remarks, her mouth forming a tight expression as she returned to the front. "All right, pay attention," Mrs. Thompson's voice pierced through the conversation, quieting the room. She set the examination stack on her workspace and leaned against it, her penetrating stare moving across the student rows. "Most of you performed adequately," she started, though her inflection implied otherwise. "However, many of you continue having difficulty with topics we've been studying for weeks." Jamal, hardly paying attention, supported his chin with his palm as his gaze returned to the glass. The gentle whisper of foliage outside appeared far more interesting than Mrs. Thompson's assessment. He failed to observe her sharp attention shift toward him as she proceeded. "This represents fundamental algebra," Mrs. Thompson stated, her voice becoming somewhat louder. "You must grasp this concept to achieve success in secondary school, higher education, or any other life pursuit." She stopped, her focus remaining on Jamal's distant look. A hint of annoyance appeared on her features. "Jamal Carter," she called sharply, her voice breaking through the quiet. Jamal straightened suddenly, his hand dropping from his chin as his classmates turned toward him, his pulse quickening and warmth flooding his face. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered, his voice nearly inaudible. Mrs. Thompson squinted her eyes. "You appear quite interested in the outdoor activity," she remarked, gesturing toward the glass. "Would you like to explain what's so captivating?" Jamal opened his mouth to reply but immediately closed it, uncertain how to respond. The room filled with some suppressed giggles, yet Mrs. Thompson remained serious. "Let's determine if you've been listening," she continued, her tone cutting. "Come forward." The room became silent as Jamal rose slowly, his seat grinding against the surface. His classmates observed with mixed entertainment and interest, some whispering quietly. "She's about to embarrass him," one pupil whispered. "He barely speaks, probably doesn't understand what's happening," another added, containing their laughter. Jamal swallowed nervously, his hands damp as he approached the front. He sensed the pressure of their observation, each step making the journey to the whiteboard seem endlessly far. Mrs. Thompson stood beside the board, marker ready, her face expressionless. "Let's see how attentive you've been," she said, inscribing a formula on the surface. It was intricate, far exceeding what the class had studied, though not beyond someone with Jamal's abilities. She moved aside, extending the marker toward him. "Proceed," she said, her tone almost daring. "Demonstrate your knowledge." Jamal accepted the marker, the smooth surface pressing against his palm. He examined the formula briefly, his thoughts accelerating. The murmurs and soft laughter from behind only intensified the stress. His heart raced, and momentarily, he considered returning the marker and retreating. Yet something prevented him. An inner voice recalled the numerous hours he'd invested solving similar challenges. This wasn't about Mrs. Thompson or his peers. It concerned him and his capabilities. Jamal breathed deeply, lifted the marker to the board, and started writing. The classroom appeared to contract as Jamal positioned himself before the whiteboard, the marker growing weightier in his grasp with each moment. His eyes examined the formula Mrs. Thompson had inscribed, a complex network of variables, powers, and fractions. It wasn't the type of challenge most eighth-grade students would face, and clearly she had selected it to evaluate him. Behind him, the class murmured and chuckled, their hushed conversations barely heard yet sharp enough to penetrate the silence. "He'll never solve that," one boy whispered quietly. "He probably doesn't know how to begin," another commented, laughing softly. Jamal's shoulders stiffened, yet he didn't turn around. Instead, he focused on the board, the challenge beginning to clarify. His heart continued pounding, but beneath the anxiety was something else, a flame of resolve. He could solve this. He simply needed to concentrate. At her workspace, Mrs. Thompson folded her arms, observing him with a skeptical expression. To her, this tested Jamal's attention as much as his ability. She had always been frustrated by his lack of participation, particularly when his potential was evident. Now she was curious to see his performance under pressure. "Well," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet, "we're waiting." Jamal inhaled deeply and raised the marker. Slowly, carefully, he began inscribing. His initial marks were hesitant, exploring cautiously, but as he progressed from step to step, his hand became more confident. Initially, the class showed no reaction. Some students had anticipated his failure or surrender, and they were surprised when he began solving the formula. As the numbers and symbols on the board started connecting, whispers filled the room. "Wait, is he actually succeeding?" a girl in the second row murmured. "Appears so," her companion replied, leaning closer for a better view. Jamal's mind worked rapidly, dividing the formula into smaller sections. He proceeded systematically, separating variables, reducing fractions, and removing unnecessary elements. His hand moved quicker now, the markers squeak against the board filling the silence. He wasn't merely solving the challenge, he was deconstructing it, breaking it into fundamental parts. The room grew quieter as more students recognized what was occurring. The whispers ceased, replaced by amazed stares. Even the boy who had laughed earlier was now leaning forward, his mouth slightly agape in astonishment. Behind Jamal, Mrs. Thompson's expression changed. She had expected his struggle, perhaps even failure, but as she observed his work develop, she experienced growing amazement. His steps were clear, accurate, and correct. She moved closer to the board, her keen gaze examining each line of his solution. Jamal paused momentarily, verifying his work before proceeding to the final steps. He could sense the class's attention now, but rather than letting it overwhelm him, he used it as motivation. He inscribed the remaining numbers, circled the solution, and capped the marker with a satisfying snap. Stepping backward, he faced the room. His heart was racing, but his expression remained composed. The whiteboard behind him displayed neat rows of calculations, each step building upon the previous one, leading to the correct solution. For a moment, nobody spoke. The room was so silent that the buzz of the overhead lights was the only audible sound. Jamal surveyed the room, noticing wide eyes and dropped jaws. Even the students who typically ignored him now regarded him with something approaching wonder. Mrs. Thompson stepped forward, her heels clicking softly on the floor. She examined the board carefully, her finger following each line of Jamal's solution. Her lips moved silently as she verified his work, her brow creasing slightly at one point before relaxing again. Finally, she turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, combining surprise with something else, respect. "This is accurate," she said, her voice softer than usual. A wave of disbelief swept through the class, followed by tentative applause. The clapping intensified, filling the room as more students participated. Jamal stood there, uncertain how to respond. His cheeks burned, but this time it wasn't from shame, it was from something new, something unfamiliar, pride. As the applause faded, Mrs. Thompson addressed the class. "What you witnessed wasn't coincidence," she said, gesturing toward the board. "This demonstrates what occurs when someone invests time in truly understanding the content." Jamal didn't just solve this challenge. He analyzed it systematically and made it appear effortless. That represents genuine comprehension. Her words lingered in the air, and for once, Jamal didn't feel compelled to retreat to his seat. Instead, he stood slightly taller, his arms relaxed at his sides. "Jamal," Mrs. Thompson continued, her tone gentler now, "why haven't you participated before? If you possess this ability, why do you remain in the back and stay so quiet?" Jamal hesitated, glancing down at his sneakers. He couldn't explain it. How could he express the fear of standing out, the comfort of remaining invisible? After a pause, he shrugged. "I didn't think anyone cared," he said quietly. Mrs. Thompson's expression softened. "Well," she said, "it's time for that to change." The applause echoed in Jamal's mind as he returned to his seat, the significance of the moment settling over him like a comforting embrace. His classmates, still processing what they had witnessed, exchanged quiet conversations and occasional glances toward him. Jamal felt their attention, but this time their eyes weren't filled with mockery or indifference. They were wide with curiosity and admiration. Mrs. Thompson remained at the front, her hands clasped as if in contemplation. She wasn't an educator who impressed easily, but Jamal had accomplished more than solving a difficult problem. He had challenged her preconceptions, not just about him, but about how she approached students like him, quiet, withdrawn, and often unnoticed. "Class," she said, raising her voice to quiet the murmurs, "what you observed today reminds us that everyone here possesses potential." Jamal demonstrated that, and he didn't just solve a problem. He showed us what it means to approach something with precision and concentration. Jamal sat at his desk, still gripping his workbook. His heart had finally steadied, but his thoughts raced. He hadn't planned for this. Solving formulas in his notebook margins had always been a personal retreat, something he did for himself, not for acknowledgement. Now, for the first time, people were recognizing him, and it felt both thrilling and frightening. A girl sitting one row ahead turned around, her eyes wide. "How did you accomplish that?" she asked, her voice mixing awe with disbelief. Jamal hesitated, unsure how to respond. I just worked it out," he said, his voice soft. Another student added, "That was incredible. Are you some kind of genius or something?" Jamal's face reddened, and he shook his head quickly. "No, I just enjoy mathematics." As the bell sounded, marking the period's end, Mrs. Thompson called out, "Jamal, could you remain for a moment?" The class began departing, but not before more students stopped to congratulate Jamal or offer a quick "that was amazing" as they passed. Jamal nodded awkwardly, gripping his notebook tighter. The attention was new, and while part of him wanted to return to his usual quiet space, another part felt a spark of pride. Once the room emptied, Mrs. Thompson leaned against her desk, studying Jamal with an expression he couldn't interpret. "Jamal," she began, her tone softer than before, "I owe you an apology." Jamal blinked, uncertain if he'd heard correctly. "An apology?" She nodded. "I've been teaching for years, and I believe I understand my students, but with you," she paused, selecting her words carefully, "I misjudged you. I thought your silence meant disinterest. I assumed your lack of participation indicated apathy. Clearly, I was mistaken." Jamal shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "It's all right," he mumbled. "No, it isn't," Mrs. Thompson said firmly. "You possess a talent, Jamal, and I don't want you to conceal it. Do you understand how unusual it is for someone your age to solve such a problem? To think as you do." Jamal looked down at his notebook, his fingers tracing the worn cover's edges. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I just like doing it. It makes sense to me." Mrs. Thompson's expression softened. "That's precisely what makes it special. You see things differently, and that's something to celebrate. But here's the thing, you can't keep it to yourself. There are programs, competitions, even advanced courses that could help you develop and challenge you. I'd be happy to help you find them if you're interested." Jamal's heart raced. The idea of entering a world beyond the quiet comfort of his personal learning was both exciting and terrifying. He thought about the moment at the board, how the formula had clicked into place and how the room had felt different afterward. Could he do more? Could he become more? "I don't know," he admitted. "What if I fail?" Mrs. Thompson smiled. "Failing is part of learning. But if you don't try, you'll never discover your capabilities." That evening, Jamal sat at the small kitchen table in his family's humble home, his notebook open before him. His parents sat nearby, listening carefully as he described the day's events, the formula, the applause, Mrs. Thompson's proposal. His mother's eyes sparkled with pride as she reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Jamal, we've always known you were special. I'm so happy others are beginning to recognize it too." His father nodded, his deep voice steady. "This is just the start, son. Don't be afraid to show the world your abilities." Jamal spent the remainder of the evening staring at his notebook's blank page. For so long, it had been a place for private thoughts, problems he solved independently, notes he never shared. But now it felt like something more, a space for possibilities. He picked up his pencil and began writing, not just formulas but ideas, aspirations, dreams. For the first time, Jamal wasn't afraid of being noticed. He was ready to step forward, to see where his talent could lead him. The following day, the atmosphere in room 302 was different. Jamal Carter, once the quiet student who disappeared into the background, now found himself at the center of attention. As he entered the classroom, his classmates greeted him with nods, smiles, and even some congratulatory gestures. "Hey, Jamal," a boy called from the back of the room. "That was incredible yesterday. How did you even manage that?" Jamal hesitated, his usual tendency to avoid attention conflicting with a new sense of pride he felt. "I just worked through it," he said humbly, moving to his usual seat by the window. "That wasn't just working through it," another girl added, leaning across her desk. "You made it look simple. You're like a mathematics genius or something." Jamal's cheeks flushed, and he shrugged. "Thanks," he murmured, his voice soft but genuine. Even students who hadn't spoken to him previously now seemed interested in him. Some asked if he could assist them with their assignments, while others simply wanted to learn more about his abilities. For the first time, Jamal felt like he wasn't invisible. Mrs. Thompson entered the room, her usual energetic pace accompanied by a glance toward Jamal that carried a hint of a smile. She began the lesson as usual, explaining the day's topic, but her tone was less harsh, her movements less rigid. When she asked Jamal to answer a question during the lesson, her voice was supportive rather than critical. Jamal hesitated briefly, but then responded confidently, his explanation clear and thorough. The class murmured in quiet amazement, and Mrs. Thompson nodded with approval. "Excellent," she said, her voice warm. "That's the kind of reasoning we need to see more of." After class, Mrs. Thompson asked Jamal to remain behind once more. This time the conversation wasn't about apologies, it was about opportunities. "Jamal," she began, sitting on her desk's edge, "I've been thinking extensively about our discussion yesterday. You have a remarkable gift, and I don't want it to be wasted." Jamal looked down at his notebook, uncertain what to say. "I don't really know how to use it," he admitted. "That's where I can assist," Mrs. Thompson said. "There's an advanced mathematics program at the district level, a class for students like you who need greater challenges. It meets after school twice weekly, and I think you'd be an excellent candidate." Jamal's eyes widened. The idea of joining an advanced class was exciting, but also intimidating. "Do you think I'd be capable enough for that?" he asked. Mrs. Thompson smiled. "I don't think. You've already demonstrated it. This is an opportunity for you to explore your potential, to see how far you can go. I've already contacted the program coordinator, and they're eager to have you." Jamal's mind raced. He thought about the problem on the board, the way the class had looked at him with respect, and the pride in his parents' eyes when he told them what had happened. Slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." The following week, Jamal attended his first advanced mathematics class. Walking into the room, he felt the same nervous anticipation he had experienced standing before the whiteboard. The other students, some from different schools, were conversing in small groups, their energy vibrant and competitive. As the instructor began the lesson, Jamal quickly realized he belonged there. The problems were challenging, the pace rapid, and the discussions engaging. For the first time, he felt surrounded by peers who shared his passion for numbers, and it was invigorating. Back at Riverside Middle, Jamal's reputation as the mathematics prodigy grew. His classmates began seeking him out for assistance, not just in mathematics, but as someone they respected. The boy who had once felt invisible was now part of the class fabric, his quiet brilliance inspiring others. Mrs. Thompson, too, found herself viewing her students differently. Jamal's transformation had reminded her of the importance of looking beyond surface behavior, of finding the hidden potential in every student. She made it her mission to engage with her quieter students, encouraging them to step forward in their own ways. One evening, as Jamal sat at the kitchen table working on a particularly challenging problem for his advanced class, his mother entered and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Jamal," she said. "You've always been special, but now the world's beginning to see it, too." Jamal looked up at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Mom," he said, glancing back at his notebook. He paused for a moment, his pencil hovering over the page. For the first time, he wasn't just solving a problem for himself. He was building a future, one equation, one opportunity, one step at a time. As he wrote the next line of his solution, Jamal felt a quiet certainty settle over him. He didn't know exactly where his path would lead, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to follow it. And in that moment, the boy who had once hidden his brilliance knew that he was ready to shine. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.